My tragedy began when I accidentally looked at my wife's phone. At the time, I was 36 years old and worked as an office worker. My wife, Ivy, was the same age as me and was a housewife. We had 2 daughters, an 11-year-old named Daisy and a 9-year-old named Esther. Ivy and I first met at work. We were assigned to the same project and became interested in each other as we worked together. We dated, got married, had kids, and went through every step of a happy relationship. At the beginning, we were very lovey-dovey, but as our kids got older, we focused more on being parents than on being a couple. So to be honest, we grew a bit distant from each other. My salary was good, but my workload was really intense. Usually by the time I returned home from work, everyone was already asleep. Even if I would happen to get home early, Ivy and I wouldn't really talk much. It felt like we were just pretending to be husband and wife. Ivy began rejecting my approaches in bed more and more often. "I'm an old woman now. I can't do like I used to." I accepted what she said as the truth, so when I found out it was a lie, I was so shocked. I'd felt like I'd collapsed. One day, when I returned home from work, everyone was asleep as usual. I was warming up my dinner as quietly as possible. My wife had left her cell phone on the sofa, and I heard its text notification sound go off multiple times. It was late at night, so to be messaging like this, it might be some sort of emergency. I looked at Ivy's phone, thinking that if it was something serious, I would wake her up. Her cell phone wasn't locked. Without thinking much, I looked at her text and saw a message that said, "I love you. You're the only one for me." Huh? The first moment I didn't understand what was going on, but the contact photo showed it was clearly a man, and they had texted each other a lot. I felt my heart thumping loudly as I looked through the texts. Feeling like I was going to throw up, I went through all the messages and found out that they had started dating last month. "Last time was a bit of a disappointment, but now I'm looking forward to next time even more," wrote a text from the man. Just from that text, I couldn't understand what he was talking about, but my wife replied, "I was surprised when my period suddenly started. I'll make sure we can definitely do it next time. I'm sorry for making you hold yourself back." Even though she would turn me down, having sex with another man was fine? I guess she wouldn't sleep with me because she was already sleeping with someone else. As I was deep in thought, my dinner went cold. Well, whatever. I let out a big sigh and sat on the couch. My wife was cheating on me. This was a betrayal I had never imagined. I looked up at the ceiling and wondered what I should do from now on. If I wake up my wife and ask her about it now, I won't be able to keep my cool. I thought maybe I could pretend I hadn't seen anything and wait for my wife's affair to end, but I wouldn't be able to handle that mentally. Among her messages with that man, she wrote, "The way my daughter talks back to me isn't cute at all. She's beginning to act more like my husband. I hate it. I can't sleep with my husband anymore. When I think to myself that I have to be with him for the rest of my life, I feel like I want to disappear. If we divorce, I want to take custody of our kids. I want to get divorced. My daughters will bother us, right?" Ivy wrote. "I will love your daughters too," her lover replied, but that just made me angry. Though I didn't get to see them during the week, I would always go out with my daughters on the weekend and talk to them about everything that I'd missed during the week. I wanted to think that we trusted each other. But since I was always at work, my wife and daughters must have been upset with me. My wife probably cheated on me because I made her feel lonely. But even if it was my fault, I couldn't defend what she had done. In the messages, they planned when they'd meet up and shared their feelings for each other. In order to collect evidence, I forced myself to calm down. With a bit of time, I noticed I was feeling a bit better. I will make sure she takes responsibility for this. I decided to buy a voice recorder and find an accomplice to help me gather evidence. I would then expose Ivy's affair in order to get a divorce, alimony, custody of our kids, and child support. Though I was sad, I didn't want to lose. I began looking forward to catching her. Thinking about it now, the shock must have made me go a bit crazy. I took photos of their conversations, ate my cold dinner, and went to bed. Ivy slept together with our daughters, so I went into my own room. My mind was racing so much that I couldn't fall asleep. The next morning, my wife woke up as if nothing had happened. She looked at my face and said, "Are you okay? You don't look all that great." I felt like saying, "That's your fault," but I held it in and headed off to work. As I was getting ready for work, Ivy was laying around the couch using her phone. It seemed like she didn't notice I had read her messages with her lover. She didn't even have a password on her phone. She wasn't wary of me at all. I guess it never occurred to her to put a password on her phone because we never looked at each other's phones, even before we got married. After work, I got in touch with a friend I was sure would be on my side. He's been a friend of mine since high school, and he knew my wife. He seemed pretty shocked when I told him Ivy was probably cheating, but he said, "No matter what happens, I'm on your side." Hearing him say that was reassuring. A few weeks passed, and I regularly checked Ivy's phone to photograph anything I thought could be used as evidence. During those few weeks, her lover Caleb had taken time off to work and they planned to meet. Since Ivy didn't work, she could do whatever she wanted when our daughters were off at school. She was great at housework, so after finishing cooking and cleaning, she still had free time for herself. They had picked a date and time, and I hired a private investigator to catch them in the act. That cost a pretty penny. I secretly had my own savings from which I took out money to pay the investigator. On the day they had chosen, Ivy was supposed to go to Caleb's house, and I asked the investigator to follow her. The goal was to learn Caleb's address and get a picture of his face. It was the day Ivy was supposed to go to Caleb's house. I went to my office as normal, but I honestly couldn't focus on my work. Thinking that while I'm sitting at my desk, Ivy was in another man's arms made me want to stand up and scream. The investigator I had hired was a very polite person, and she sent me all the information via email. In the photos the investigator sent, I saw Ivy kissing that man. I understood. That was definitely Ivy. I was surprised from how close up the investigator managed to capture the photos. They were so focused on each other that they must have not noticed. I went and spoke with the lawyer my friend had introduced me to. Since I had evidence of the affair, he said I'll have no problem divorcing my wife, and depending on what my daughters said, I might be able to win parental custody too. Since Ivy had texted her lover that our daughters weren't cute and that she didn't want them, it's possible she didn't even want custody. Our older daughter Daisy had a strong sense of justice and would definitely be angry at her mom for cheating on me. As for our younger daughter Esther, it was harder to say what she'd think, but since she loved her older sister, she was likely to follow her footsteps. Of course, I was being optimistic. If my daughters wanted to be with their mother, I would accept that. Ivy met Caleb many times, and I collected a lot of evidence. I even had voice recordings of them, but I kept waiting for the right moment to reveal everything. Around mid-December, I told the private investigator and my lawyer that I would be making the final move within this year. On Christmas, it was time for me to claim my victory. I asked my wife if she had any plans for Christmas Eve while I was at work. Without changing her expression at all, she said, "There's a Christmas party going on at the kids' school, and both Daisy and Esther were invited by their friends, so I wasn't planning to do anything special at home." According to Ivy's messages with her lover, he was supposed to be coming over today. Because of the Christmas party, Daisy and Esther were going to get home around the time they usually got home from school. While Daisy, Esther, and I were out of the house, Ivy planned to invite her lover over. I had called my parents and in-laws and asked them to come over to our house that day. Even if Ivy's lover didn't come over, I would reveal all the evidence I had gathered. Even though I had taken the day off work, I got dressed and left the house as if I was going to the office as usual. Around noon, the investigator gave us a signal, and the six of us, my parents, in-laws, lawyer, and I, all entered our home. Next to the front door were a man's shoes. There were no signs of anyone in the living room, but we heard voices from the bedroom upstairs. Hearing my wife's voice, I froze. My lawyer encouraged me to step forward. Spurred on by my lawyer, I climbed up the stairs and opened the bedroom door while yelling, "Don't move!" On top of the bed were two naked people. I couldn't process what was going on. I stared at them blankly. The air in the room felt frozen. The person who first broke the silence in the room was my father-in-law. "What are you doing?" He slapped Ivy across the face and raised his hand to do it again. I tried to calm him down, but every time I'd let him go, he'd raise his hand to hit Ivy again. Ivy curled into a ball and cried. Caleb didn't seem to understand what was happening. I was wondering what to say to them, and considering whether I should punch Ivy's lover, but my father-in-law was so overwhelmingly angry I couldn't get a word out. My lawyer entered from the hallway. "We need to talk. Please put on some clothes." Caleb quickly began getting dressed. Ivy also began putting on clothes as she continued to cry. My investigator had already looked into Ivy's lover, so I didn't have much to ask him. Caleb was 31 years old and worked for a very well-known company. He was married but didn't have kids, and had told Ivy that his relationship with his wife was very cold. He and Ivy met through a dating app. "You didn't plan on divorcing me and marrying him?" I asked Ivy. "No, I'm really sorry. I made a mistake. The only person I really love is you," Ivy said softly. "Really? But I won't accept anything other than divorce." My wife seemed deeply surprised by that. Understanding that I meant what I said, she covered her face and cried again. "You did this to yourself. Sebastian is the one who should be crying now." Hearing my father-in-law say that genuinely did make me feel like crying. Caleb seemed to be more worried about his job than his family. "You can tell my wife everything, just please don't bring up my job," he pleaded. "As long as you don't cause any unnecessary trouble, I don't plan to," I said, and Caleb seemed to relax a little. "I'm incredibly sorry. I will do everything I can, so please just don't spread this at my workplace." He apologized countless times. "We will continue this conversation another day. I will contact you with the details, so please come to my office then," said my lawyer. With red eyes, my father-in-law said to me, "I'm so sorry. We will pay you back for this." He then pulled Ivy away. Ivy continued to cry, but said nothing. I decided to go to my parents' house after I picked up my daughters from school and left my in-laws to deal with Ivy. Daisy and Esther seemed confused by the fact we were suddenly going to their grandparents' house, and because their mom wasn't with us. I wondered how much I should tell them. Telling them, "Your mom loves another man," might not go well. I didn't want my daughters to see me worrying, but Daisy noticed. "Dad, did Mom go to be with the man on the telephone?" she asked. I asked Daisy what she meant, and she said that sometimes her mom would have long phone conversations with a man. After each call, Ivy would either become very happy or very angry, so Daisy suspected that the man wasn't just a regular friend. "I worried what would happen if you found out, so I stayed quiet. He was a bad person in the end, huh?" Feeling so sorry to my daughters and angry at Ivy, my words got stuck in my throat. Daisy understood how I felt without me having to speak, and she began patting my shoulder. "Let's do our best together from now on," she said. I looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry for not being good enough. I'll make sure we'll be happy," I said. "You're over-exaggerating," Daisy said with a light laugh. "I'll go pack my stuff," she said and left the room. I was surprised how mature she was, even though she was so young. A few days later, I talked to Esther about how we'll be living from now on. Esther was confused at first, but Daisy told her, "It's the telephone man," and Esther understood and accepted things quickly. I felt as if they were forcing themselves to act cheerful so that I wouldn't feel sad, so I vowed to myself that I would recover from this quickly and make my daughters happy from the bottom of their hearts. At the beginning of the new year, both couples involved in the affair gathered at my lawyer's office. Ivy and Di and Caleb and his wife all divorced. Caleb's wife and I both claimed alimony from our parents, and Ivy agreed to me getting full custody of our daughters. I didn't want Ivy to claim visiting rights for our kids, so I decided not to ask her for child support. I thought the divorce negotiations would be more complicated, but Ivy accepted all of my conditions without any complaints. After the divorce, Ivy and Caleb had nothing stopping them from meeting. Whether they chose to marry each other or not is up to them. Even after the long divorce negotiations came to an end, Ivy and I didn't really have much to say to each other. We were together for so long, but this is how things end, huh? After the divorce, my daughters and I lived with my parents, but after a while the three of us moved into a new apartment. I got used to Ivy not being around quicker than I expected. Even though she was someone I loved and swore to be with the rest of my life, my feelings had changed so much. It's not that I didn't love her anymore, and sometimes I would even randomly burst into tears when I thought about our divorce. But as I focused on the present, the pain and sadness slowly disappeared. Since their mom was gone, I gave Daisy and Esther as much love as I could. I decided I will make sure that they are as happy as possible from now on. Esther is going on a field trip soon. We decided to prepare her an extra special lunchbox for the trip, all together, as a trio. My daughters probably feel sad about all this, but they're doing their best to support me, so I will do the same for them. If the three of us work together, I'm sure we can overcome any hardship. Thank you for watching. Did you enjoy this video? If you did, please tune in for the next one, and subscribe to our channel below.